from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Your liberty-loving Latino amigo. Happy to be here with you on this Monday night. We're live, we're national, and the phone number, if you want to join us, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. I'll be getting to calls in about 40 minutes or so. And a few things I want to get on to talk about tonight. The war on truth continues, right? Despite what we've seen and everything we've heard, you've had Barack Obama scolding black male voters last week. We talked about it on the radio, and there's been countless videos of black voters saying that they're switching to Trump. But despite all of that, CBS News is now reporting that their latest poll shows Kamala erasing Trump's lead, or at least the gains, I should say, right? She was always in the lead with African-American voters, but he was making some gains. Well, CBS says, nope, that's not the case. And I say to that this is a war on truth and that your brain is the battlefield, because there's no other way to explain those things. I am hard-pressed to find anybody that's saying, honestly, anybody that's saying, look, I'm a Kamala voter and I am I'm doing it because of X, Y, and Z. Every now and again, you get a few people that call into the radio show and say those things. But in reality, when I go out to the store, when I walk around, when I mention things, nobody's got anything positive to say about Kamala Harris, because there really isn't a lot of positive to say. And that's just, in my opinion, that's a fact. She's just not good at this. But that's where we are. So while we're seeing less and less support for Kamala Harris, at least with my eyeballs, anecdotally, we're reading more and more support for her is being generated, which, again, it's a conundrum, if you will. Anyway, I continue. The next thing that they're going to probably tell us is that there really isn't a problem at the border. Remember when they did that, right? The border is secure. The border is secure. There is no crisis at the border, right? Mayorkas, Harris, the borders are. I remember all that. But despite all of that, the Border Patrol and the Border Patrol Union, I should say, they endorsed President Trump this weekend. Like, big time. Right, there was all sorts of. It wasn't just like the union head. It was like the union head and like another 50 guys that were all there. It was a really, in my opinion, it was a big outpouring of support of them saying, "Hey, look, this is the guy we want to help us secure the border." I don't think it's because they're radical MAGA Republicans. I don't think that's the case. I think what's really happening here is that they realize that you have to uphold the law. You have to uphold the law. Meanwhile, you've got Democrats that are out there saying that they might not certify a Trump victory. Right? You remember when we played that clip for you? Jamie Raskin, whose dad was a big communist. He says we're all going to have to get bodyguards because the Supreme Court won't do their job. Shame, shame, shame. Anyway, Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris is now being questioned about plagiarism. A lot of questions that have arisen about her, about the veracity of certain things she's written. The New York Times is now admitting that Kamala Harris plagiarized. Certain claims were not very serious, they're saying, from a book that she'd written. The New York Times admitted Monday that Vice President Kamala Harris had plagiarized multiple passages in her 2009 book, Smart on Crime, but claimed that the copying was not serious and only a small portion of the book. So that's how it works, right? Just like Joe Biden, right? Joe El Baboso Biden, he was also caught for plagiarizing. That's actually why it tanked one of his original bids for president. And it seems like the reason they treat us like we're stupid is because they've engineered a system where you get information solely from them. I'm going to make them a collective right now just for the sake of argument. If we go to Google, right? I'd say in the last, 15 years or so, Google, maybe more, probably definitely more. Maybe more like 20 or 20 some odd years. Google has become the thing. Now, there was once a thing called Ask.com or Ask Jeeves, right? There was a few people who used to use Yahoo. But for the most part, I think now it's just Google. And, some people who are anti-Google will use the Bill Gates alternative, DuckDuckGo. Either one of them isn't really going to tell you. They tell you what's available to them. And we know that these algorithms get, for lack of a better word, hacked or weighted or shadow banned or whatever word you want to use, but you don't get what you want. This is literally the anniversary of the Hunter Biden laptop story. Remember when that happened and a bunch of intelligence professionals said, oh, that's not real. That's fake, phony, and fraud. Meanwhile, it turned out to be very real. Turns out the guy got locked up. He got in trouble. He's got more stuff pending. Isn't that something? But at the time, that was not the case. And that was a contentious point on one of the Sunday shows yesterday. Senator J.D. Vance, the Republican vice presidential candidate, was going at it with Martha Raddatz. And this guy is a champ, I have to tell you. He has a knack. He has finesse in dealing with the media and showing them, exposing them to themselves mainly, how they look and what they're doing. And it's a quite remarkable skill. Not everybody has it. But it's an excellent ability that he has. And I think we have a clip of that. Listen to this.
We played some other comments about migrants, including in Aurora, in Colorado, where Trump said the city had been invaded and conquered by Venezuelan gangs. The Republican mayor of the city said flatly the city and state have not been taken over or invaded or occupied by migrant gangs. So do you support Donald Trump making those claims that the Republican mayor says were grossly exaggerated and have hurt the city's identity and sense of safety? I understand what you're saying, that some people left behind, but he's making these statements that the mayor is flat out disputing.
Well, Martha, you just said the mayor said they were exaggerated.
Grossly exaggerated.
That means there's got to be some element of truth here. And of course, President Trump was actually in Aurora, Colorado, talking to people on the ground. And what we're hearing, of course, Martha, is that people are terrified by what has happened with some of these Venezuelan gangs.
Senator Vance, I'm going to stop you because I know exactly what happened.
Martha.
I'm going to stop you. The incidents were limited to a handful of apartment complexes, and the mayor said our dedicated police officers have acted on those concerns. A handful of problems.
Only, Martha, do you hear yourself? Only a handful of apartment complexes in America were taken over by Venezuelan gangs, and Donald Trump is the problem and not Kamala Harris's open border. Americans are so fed up with what's going on, and they have every right to be. And I really find this exchange, Martha, sort of interesting because you seem to be more focused with nitpicking everything that Donald Trump has said rather than acknowledging that apartment complexes in the United States of America are being taken over by violent gangs. I worry so much more about that problem than anything else here. We've got to get American communities in a safe space again.
Well, there you go. That's Senator J.D. Vance schooling Martha Raddatz on ABC News. And what's interesting about this is, again, this is the war on truth, and it continues. And as he was giving out the truth from his perspective, she said, I'm going to stop you right there, Senator. You know why? Because that's always what happens when the establishment doesn't like the narrative. When the truth is being revealed, they want to put the kibosh on it, the brakes, and they say, no mas. But here's the thing. They've done this time and again. It's in their playbook. So when you're analyzing this stuff, you have to account for that, right? Just think about during COVID. During COVID, they put the kibosh and hit the brakes on Dr. Robert Malone. Malone was one of the inventors of the mRNA vaccine technology and was out there sounding the alarm, banging the pots and pans, saying this is not for everybody. And they largely ignored him. Then they silenced him. Then they went as far as to try to ruin the guy. And he's been on this program, and we're going to have him back in the next segment. But it just goes to show you how serious the psychological warfare is that is being played by whomever you want to call it. You can call it the media, the left within the media, the deep state, the globalists. There are powers that be, power players, very powerful people who pull strings on other powerful people that have control in media, in aerospace, in government, in big pharma, in big science, if you will, in so many areas, academia, and in communications across the board. And they're constantly after your mind. They're constantly trying to win the war on truth for their benefit. And that's what we're here to do. So we're going to catch up with Dr. Robert Malone. He's got a brand new book out, and it's called PsyWar, Enforcing the New World Order. We're going to learn about that and more straight ahead. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Well, thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Harris was asked recently on the debate stage whether she thinks Americans are better off now than 4 years ago, and she didn't directly answer that question. So I'll ask you, does she think Americans are better off now or not?
Well, I think that she talked pretty openly about the mess that we inherited when President Trump left office and the economy and the crash that happened because of his total mismanagement of COVID and the way that COVID itself created global inflation numbers that were out of control. And so she thinks that the American people have made progress, but that we have to go even further. That's why she has a plan specifically to take on corporate price gouging when they jack up prices in emergencies like that, especially on things like food and at the grocery store. And at the same time, you have Nobel Prize winning economists who have come out and said that Donald Trump's economic plan would actually blow up inflation and make it worse.
Well, that's again, Sam's talking about the economic record over here of Kamala Harris versus Trump and blaming Trump for all the COVID fiasco. But the reality was it was the scientists, right? They said follow the science and that we had to shut down the economy. We had to quarantine every last person, and we had to then put out this massive vaccination effort in order to save the world. And while we now know that wasn't in fact all true, it remains that it caused serious damage to the economy. And this is just one example of the type of psychological warfare that we've seen displayed in the last several years with the pandemic and now with this election and so many things in between. And while he's talking about award-winning economists, we had internationally renowned virologists that were saying you don't have to do all these things, but they happened anyway. Because, again, it's a war on truth, sadly. And that seems to be the focus of what the left or anybody who's not we the people, they're the ones I'm putting in the crosshairs. I say that they're the enemy of our liberty. So I want to bring in our guest, Dr. Robert Malone. He is the author of a brand new book, PsyWar, Enforcing the New World Order. Dr. Malone, welcome back.
Thanks for having me on.
You bet. So let's talk about this. This new book, a little bit of a different angle, right? You're talking about propaganda and behavioral control, psychological bioterrorism, the censorship that's coming from the administrative state, the surveillance of capitalism, and so many other topics. What inspired you to write the book?
Well, a few things. Number one was trying to make sense out of what I was being subjected to, and not just me, but a lot of the people around me. And you've been talking about Donald Trump quite a bit. Of course, Donald Trump has received it in spades more than almost anybody else ever.
Yeah.
So in trying to make sense out of it over the last, it's 5 years now. Can you believe it?
Amazing.
It started in the fall of 2019, and here we are. We're just about to hit 2025. I mean, it's amazing that it's gone on this long. But I was kind of just taken aback by what happened with the press, with the censorship, with the deplatforming, with the crowd stalking and gang stalking. all the crap that happened on social media. And I'd never seen anything like this before. I'm a veteran of multiple outbreaks in terms of working with the government and working on drugs and vaccines, and I've never seen anything like this in my life. So trying to make sense out of it, I started to look into these technologies relating to propaganda, one of which was fifth-generation warfare. And I read some of the early texts in teaching and writing in the military about fifth-generation warfare, and then I started talking about it. And I gave a lecture in Stockholm that just kind of blew people's minds. And that's when I knew that I had really hit on something important, because we keep talking about medical freedom, but what back then, I mean, this is 3-4 years ago, people weren't recognizing was that the real issue was freedom. It wasn't medical freedom. And what we were going through was just one aspect of a much bigger issue. And so we began writing about this on our Substack, my wife and I. We put out pretty much an essay a day. And as we got into it, we realized there really wasn't anything that had kind of bundled together the modern point of view of what's going on with the censorship industrial complex and all of these different technologies that were developed for offshore combat. NATO calls it hybrid warfare, but have been turned against the people of virtually all the Western nations. And then, having written about it for a few years, we decided it was time to put it together as a book. So over the last 2 years, Jill and I have pulled together this book. And the goal here is to basically help people to understand and see what's being done to them, how they're being manipulated, and what's behind it, who's doing it, why are they doing it, so that hopefully people can become a lot more resistant to this kind of technology that's being used on them.
Wow, that's absolutely amazing. And, you know, it takes somebody who's been through it and understands it to really, I think, explain it as eloquently as you did. Folks, again, we're on with Dr. Robert W. Malone. He is a MD, PhD, researcher, scientist, inventor of the mRNA vaccine technology. He's written this book, PsyWar, Enforcing the New World Order. And we're going to get into the book and everything that he's just talked about and kind of unpack it a little bit because I think he brought up a number of topics. And Dr. Malone, firsthand, you've been through so many of these. So if you'll stick with me, I want to come back and kind of dig into the book. And folks, I want to again remind you to get a copy of this book for yourself and a copy to give away to someone who obviously will benefit from it. The book, again, PsyWar, PSYWAR, Enforcing the New World Order, by Robert Malone. And this is a conversation I think that you just don't want to miss. It's not every day we have a conversation that really goes into this at this level, but we see the results of it every single day. So, folks, we're coming right back. Of course, your calls are coming up in about maybe 20 minutes or so. 833-4825-337, 833-4-VALDEZ is the phone number. And we're coming right back with our guest, Dr. Robert Malone.
The best guests, the best opinions. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. We continue the conversation with Dr. Robert Malone. He's the author of the book, PsyWar, Enforcing the New World Order. And this book talks about when government coordinates and directs the deployment of propaganda, censorship, and psychological operations, or PSYOPs, the tools that they use in their campaigns that are disguised to tell the truth, but they're really designed to manipulate public opinion. And these are the things I want to break down from his perspective, because, again, Dr. Malone was targeted for saying things against a vaccine that he invented part of the technology for. And he was ostracized and ridiculed and blacklisted in so many different ways. And he's here with us now to tell us some of what went into this book. Dr. Malone, welcome back. Tell us a little bit about the, what you wrote about. Obviously, you're talking about fifth generation warfare, psychological warfare tactics, this new world order and global control, and psychological bioterrorism. Give us a few examples.
So psychological bioterrorism is something that maybe it's because it's an early chapter, but a lot of people latch onto that. It's a term that actually originates with a Soviet intelligence agent from the SVR that left Russia and immigrated to New Zealand. And he gave an interview in 2017 in which he talked about the spycraft of using fear about infectious disease to manipulate populations and disrupt economies. And he laid out in this amazing interview a series of steps and roles and responsibilities that is well-established spycraft. And he used the example of the prior bird flu scare that was circulating. Of course, that's all being recapitulated now with the latest bird flu fear that's totally irrational. But when I read his interview from New Zealand, it just blew my mind, because I realized that every single step that he described, I had experienced and seen firsthand in what was deployed with the COVID crisis. There is no way that the kind of global coordination of messaging and of methods that were used and seen in the COVID crisis could be promoted other than by the intelligence consortia, which is known as the Five Eyes Alliance. This is the most powerful intelligence group in modern history, and it ties together the intelligence agencies of the United States, UK, Canada, New Zealand, and Australia, which, by the way, were among some of the most totalitarian, heavy-handed responses to the COVID crisis came from those countries. And the evidence is that basically the intelligence community, together with the DOD, managed this whole affair, including the development and deployment of the vaccines. And what just fries my brain is that governments and organizations feel that it's okay, that it is morally acceptable to deploy the fear of infectious disease on the population in order to manipulate how they behave, what they do, all these things that we'd experience with the lockdowns, etc. And remember, this all resulted in the most massive upward transfer of wealth in modern history. So psychological bioterrorism is one of the key concepts here, but there's a number of other ones. I mean, there's all the little details about how the government coordinated with big tech, et cetera, et cetera. We've heard about that from Schellenberger and Taibbi and Mike Benz and Kash Patel and so many others. But one of the other big ones that's really kind of mind-bending is surveillance capitalism. And what surveillance capitalism is, it's the business model that makes Silicon Valley run. It's what makes them so profitable. What they do, and we all kind of experience it, we know it. You know it intuitively when you've been talking about something with a friend or on the internet or did a little search, and suddenly Amazon is trying to sell you stuff that relates to some conversation you had. Likewise, Google, okay? The surveillance capitalism is basically the theft, the taking away of your metadata, that's Silicon Valley talk, I assert that essentially they're stealing part of your soul. And they're taking it and fashioning it, restructuring it as behavioral futures. And then they're selling those behavioral futures. Delco does it. Ken Paxton in Texas is suing Delco and GM for stealing data on your driving habits. I mean, we're surrounded by these companies that are grabbing all kinds of information about us and then selling it to others that use it for all kinds of purposes, including, by the way, deploying psychological warfare, bioterrorism kind of stuff on us in order to manipulate how we think and feel. And the sum of all this is that you get to a point where you're not even sure if you're having a thought or an idea, if it's really yours, or if it's been planted in you because of your exposure to social media and the internet and corporate media that's all trying to manipulate everything about what information you get access to, what you feel, what you believe. This is all being actively weaponized and manipulated. And at the core of that is surveillance capitalism, this business model that is what's making all the tech moguls so rich these days.
Unbelievable. And, you know, it's partially what is to blame or to explains why there's such a target on talk radio, being that it's still an analog medium. It kind of goes around these algorithms, and that's why I think us in talk radio are constantly in the crosshairs of that. Folks, we're on with Dr. Robert Malone discussing his new book. The book is called PsyWar, Enforcing the New World Order. Dr. Malone, it's a pleasure talking to you like always. Would you let everyone know where to go if they want to follow you and keep up to speed with all the amazing work you're doing?
Well, thank you very much. I'm on social media, on X, Getter, Gab, and Truth Social at RW Malone MD. But our main outlet is Malone.news, which is our renaming of our Substack so that we can get around the soft censors at X. So Malone.news comes out daily. You don't have to pay. You can subscribe, and it comes straight into your inbox. And then the books, of course, and radio and various podcasts. So thanks a lot for having me on. Absolutely,
and we'll make sure to make this platform available to you again as we progress with a lot of these stories. I'm sure these things are going to unfold, and we'd like to get your opinion and update on it as well. Good luck with the book. Again, the book, PsyWar, Enforcing the New World Order. Dr. Robert Malone, you are a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on. Bye-bye.
You bet. All right, amigos, we continue our conversation with you all, the American people. The phone lines are going to be open for the next segment or two. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. America at Night, your home for the best election coverage.
All right, amigos, welcome back, familia. We continue our discussion. The phone number again, 833-482-5337. And before I jump into that, I want you to hear a clip of somebody I have dubbed Que mala eres. That's right. That means how bad you are in Spanish. And she truly is so bad, and I love to call her that because it's funny. And B, it really is such a great description of her. But Que mala eres is now trying her hand at my job because I think she knows she's going to be out of a job come, I don't know, November or whatever it is, once she's done there and she loses. And she's trying her hand at becoming a talk show host. And she was auditioning at one of her campaign events today, or yesterday rather, and she was basically calling for her producer to play some audio or a little video clip of El Trumpito Donaldus Magnus, the 45th president of these United States. Listen to this.
So after all these years, we know who Donald Trump is. He is someone who will stop at nothing to claim power for himself. And you don't have to take my word for it. I've said for a while now, watch his rallies. Listen to his words. He tells us who he is. And he tells us what he would do if he is elected president. So here tonight, I will show you one example of Donald Trump's worldview and intentions. Please roll the clip.
The worst people are the enemies from within.
The enemy from within. Those people are more dangerous, the enemy from within, than Russia and China.
These people should be put in jail the way they talk about our judges and our justices. Now, if you had one really violent day, one rough hour, and I mean real rough.
I think the bigger problem are the people from within. We have some very bad people. We have some sick people, radical left lunatics. And I think they're and it should be very easily handled by, if necessary, by National Guard, or if really necessary, by the military.
So you heard his words. You heard his words coming from him. He's talking about the enemy within Pennsylvania.
Okay. Now, this is, again, the Battle on Truth, and that was a snippet of America at Night with Kim Malaeres, your new host. And I don't know who you like better, me or her, but I can tell you this. She's trying to frame Trump, like always, as something he isn't, saying things that he didn't really say, right? Find people on both sides, all these things that have been debunked. Trump talks about using the military and the National Guard, rather, for the bad hombres, right? The bad hombres at the border, and for things where they're needed, right? Civil unrest and things of that nature. And when he had the opportunity to do these things, the proof is in the pudding. He didn't do it. A lot of people say, oh, because we could have used the Insurrection Act. I am one of them. My interpretation of the Insurrection Act would have been something that he could have used, similar to, trying to use a scenario like Abraham Lincoln did way back when. But he didn't. He chose to always take the high road. Trump was never heavy-handed with anything. He was always very fair-handed, very even-handed, I have to say, probably to the chagrin of many of his own supporters who are very, very eager to see justice be done. But something that Trump, I think, constantly does, and to his benefit and to his credit, is he honors and respects the United States Constitution. He respects the separation of powers. He respects the consent of the governed. He constantly does this. He's done it with abortion, saying leave it up to the states. It's clear to me he's read the Anti-Federalist Papers. He's read the Federalist Papers. He understands America's founding documents, and he honors that. And you could tell in his actions. Sometimes maybe his rhetoric might get a little hot, but he in his actions, you can see it. Very different than what we see from the Democrats, from Joe El Baboso Biden, from Kim Malaeres. They're always trying to weaponize government one way or another for their benefit. Because, sadly, they lack something that Trump brings to the table, and honestly, a lot of entrepreneurial Americans bring to the table. And that is, they lack ever having ran a business, signed the front of a paycheck, hired an employee, created a job. People like Biden and Harris, these are not people that just worked for a public employees union. Like, hey, I worked in the state government, the federal government all their life. No. That's not just what they've done. These are people that have been in elective office forever, right? Their entire professional career, they've been elected to some sort of job and have, quote unquote, serving the public. But in reality, it seems like they're serving themselves. There's no ingenuity there. The only ingenuity they've ever exercised is how to use and skirt the system for their own benefit. That's really it. They're experts at the deep state, if you will, the administrative state. They're experts at it. But when it comes to actually understanding real world problems, how could they? They've never lived in the real world. They live in a world with unlimited sick days. They live in a world where if something or somebody in their union goes on strike or there's a furlough, they get back pay 100% of the time. They live in a world where it's almost impossible to lose your job unless you don't get voted back in, but they become parts of a political machine, so they make sure they always win elections. You tell me if someone like that can represent your interests. You that's out there working as a school teacher or working in a school period, as a lunch aide, as a security officer, as a maintenance person. How could they understand any of that? How could they understand what it's like to be a nurse and work multiple shifts? How could they understand any of it? How could they understand any job that's competitive, where if you don't perform, you lose your job, right? Maybe a politician could say that if they don't perform as politicians, they don't get reelected, but it's a little bit of a stretch, especially when you're a member of Congress and you're able to make all the money you can make on your legalized insider trading, right? I mean, it's no secret. These guys go in there with a little bit of money, they come out with a lot. So you tell me, when you get a guy who made his money somewhere else and doesn't need to make it on the backs of the American taxpayer, this is a threat to them because it hits them in the pocketbook. All of their collective gravy train can come to an end, or at least be strangled a little bit. Nobody wants that. If you're in the deep state, nobody wants that. They want to continue the flow of capital to them for their interests, for their benefit. Anyway, we will continue our conversation straight ahead. 833-482-5337. I'm sorry I didn't get to your calls in the last one. Maybe I'll get to them in this one. Hopefully I will. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, we continue with your phone calls and more. Let's go to Katie, calling us from Reading, Pennsylvania, WEEU. Katie, go for it very quickly.
Hey, just a thing about Fish Girl here. Listen, smack me if I'm wrong, but didn't some historical president whose name I don't know because I didn't look it up before I called, say something about the enemy within? And let's face it, the truth is the truth. Hello, you know? And yeah. I think we should all get to learn the song Fish Heads by the end of the week and have a sing-along for her.
I'll have to learn it myself, Katie. Thank you. And I think you're right. The enemy within is a real thing. It's always been a real thing. Matter of fact, Abraham Lincoln in his second inaugural talked about how America would only be undone from within. And I think that's true. We've never seen a threat like we've seen now, right? And we've had plenty of wars. We've had plenty of enemies. The biggest enemy does lie right here within, and I think most of them have worked in the CIA. Let's go to Saul in Albany, New York. WGDJ, go for it quickly.
Okay. I'm responding to that conversation you had with Robert Malone. Okay?
Yes, quickly.
There is another author called Norman Ohler who wrote a book called Trip.
Make the point because you're going to run out of time.
The point is, it's about Nazi Germany, the CIA, and the dawn of the psychedelic age.
I'll have to check it out. I think that age has not ended. Saul, thank you for your call. I appreciate it. Shout out to everybody in Albany, New York, WGDJ, Paul Vandenberg country. And folks, we continue with another hour of what's going on in America at night with me, Rich Valdez. Keep it locked right here. Don't go anywhere.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, your liberty-loving Latino amigo, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. And I want to remind you that our phone number is 833-482-5337-8334-Valdez. The topic thus far this evening has been the war on truth, the psychological warfare that's being conducted against the American people that's been going on since COVID, probably longer than that, obviously, but that was where we started this conversation on what happened since COVID. And, of course, that continues through now, this election, and so much of the geopolitical affairs that are going on all across the world. And there's plenty going on, right? I mean, there really is a ton of stuff to look at and to talk about. We were talking about the Five Eyes Intelligence Consortium, talking about Kamala Harris trying her hand at being a talk show host, playing clips of Trump, lying about his position on things. This is an all-out battle for the truth that goes beyond rhetoric and disagreement and perspective. I think this is an all-out fight for your mind, as I stated earlier. And the propaganda is real. And it's something we have to pay attention to, because while we're, getting bamboozled by watching American media, there are things happening all around the world that affect all of us. And the Americans are just on the sidelines, allowing China to do what they want to do. There are drills going on with respect to how they would potentially take Taiwan if they wanted to, whether that's China being a paper tiger or them actually preparing to do what they have to do. Either way, it's something to pay attention to. And it seems like our President Joel Baboso Biden or Vice President Kamala Harris, neither one of them really care about what's going on there. They're too concerned with holding on to political power. But I've got a report that I want you to hear about what exactly is going on with these drills in China. Check this out.
We knew more of these drills were coming following the exercises in May, which were dubbed Joint Sword A. These, dubbed Joint Sword B, they're also very large in scale and basically, again, are a dress rehearsal for what China would need to do to take over the island of Taiwan. China publishing maps indicating that its forces were surrounding the whole island. The drills, which China says are now successfully concluded, involved every branch of the Chinese military. They simulated blockading the island, cutting off the main ports and practicing how to shoot targets on land and sea. Taiwan scrambled fighter jets in response and deployed anti-air and anti-ship missiles too. Taiwanese authorities calling the drills irrational provocations. Now, China, for its part, says they are a warning to those who promote independence. President William Lai, that's the leader of Taiwan, he made a speech during Taiwan's National Day last week saying Taiwan would do everything it needed to resist annexation. That drew criticism from China, which already calls Lai a troublemaker. Now, we heard from the State Department too, saying it's seriously concerned and calling for China to use restraint, at the same time reaffirming the U.S. commitment to a one-China policy. That's a key cornerstone of U.S.-China relations, which formally recognizes that there is only one Chinese government.
Okay, there you have that report. And again, so many things happening with respect to China, China and the U.S., China and their relations with Iran, China and their relations with Putin and the Russians. And I want to get a synopsis on that, as well as learn more about the new book, China is Going to War. The author is Gordon Chang. You can find him at Gordon G. Chang on Twitter. Gordon Chang, welcome back, sir.
Thank you so much, Rich.
You bet. So what's your initial take on these drills that are going on? I know we've talked about a possible attack on Taiwan in the past, and while it's a possibility, it seems like an unlikely one, or it did at the time. Do you think any of that's changed? Does it seem more imminent, or do you think it's still something China may not be interested in doing right now?
Yeah, I don't think that China is going to start hostilities with an invasion of the main island of Taiwan. For one thing, Xi Jinping doesn't trust his generals and admirals. A war on Taiwan would be extremely unpopular with the Chinese people right now, and the regime is casualty averse. But the people around the region, and especially the leadership in Taiwan, thinks that China could establish a quarantine around the island, and they think they could do that within 6 months. A quarantine is technically not an act of war, but in this case, I think it would lead to war. And so we've got to be prepared that there will be a war in East Asia very soon.
So let's talk about that. How does that unfold? Why do you think they would do that? Given many of our past or previous conversations, you've always talked about the unrestricted warfare that China has been waging against the world. And it usually isn't a hot war. In many ways, it's a cold war or intelligence war. Why do you think they're going to resort to an actual a hot war?
Yeah, it could be at Taiwan, could be, I think, more likely in the Philippines. But in any event, Xi Jinping is now being held responsible for the simultaneous crises in China. You got a crumbling economy, plunging property prices, falling currency, accelerating capital flight, crumbling. You got deteriorating environment, worsening food shortages, failing local governments, and eroding demography. And Xi does not know what to do. Matter of fact, his policies are aggravating the situation. And because he has now total accountability for what's going on, he realizes that he's got to do something. If he doesn't, the Communist Party is going to fail. So creating a war someplace, starting a war someplace, is, for him, I think, an attractive option. And he needs a quick victory. And so he wants to do something which he won't be blamed for starting the war, but it's something that will, I think, divert the Chinese leadership into not challenging him. I know he believes that the Chinese people right now don't want war. But if he starts a war, he will prevent other senior Communist Party leaders from challenging or even deposing him. So it's in his interest right now to change the status quo in ways which are horrible.
So the war is a power play to kind of just say, hey, look, we're still here. We're still top dog, at least in Asia, and just really a little bit of a chest thumping, if you will.
Well, yes, and I think it would be largely the result of domestic political pressures and intense infighting at the top of the Communist Party. And now, Xi Jinping could start a war and take us by surprise, and the reason is he may have only a 10% chance of success if he starts something. And we would say, well, nobody would start a war if they only had a 10% chance. But if Xi Jinping believes that it's total certainty that he will lose his power and could very well lose his assets in his life, then a 10% chance looks actually pretty good. So right now, it's China's domestic weaknesses could translate into a conflict of some sort.
Outstanding analysis. Gordon Chang, stick with me. We're going to come right back. I want to talk about how the geopolitical implications of China in Asia and around the world tie into what's going on here in America. And we're going to do that with Gordon Chang at Gordon G. Chang on Twitter. And he's the author of the book. You make sure you get a copy. China's Going to War. And I would recommend getting 2 copies, one for yourself, one to give to somebody who's not in the know so they could be in the know. Don't go anywhere. We're coming right back with Gordon Chang.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Well, thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
I have my dates wrong. I was in Hong Kong and China in 1989. That that move from Hong Kong into China, it was profound for me. That was the summer of democracy. I said it's where I understood how sacred democracy was. It's what encouraged me about 15 back and forth with my students, taking them to China to understand both, first of all, the culture, but also to teach Chinese students about democracy. That was part of it. I was one of the first group of high school students. There weren't a lot of times that there were high school teachers in there that you could teach in a Chinese high school. And so you've seen me. These teachers see me. I speak like everybody else speaks. I need to be clear, I will tell you that, but here's my whole point on that thing with China. I do understand China a hell of a lot better than Donald Trump. Kamala Harris understands China. I will tell you this, Xi Jinping is not someone you should look up to. Xi Jinping is not someone who you should say does a good job on things, as Donald Trump has said about COVID. And my point on this was Donald Trump got played on a trade war. He created the largest deficit with China in American history, and he cost us 150,000 jobs.
Again, that is Tiananmen Tim Walz, the governor of, what is that, Minnesota, and the running mate to Kamala Harris. And he says that Trump doesn't know what he's doing on China. Again, I want to correct myself. I talked about Gordon's book, but the latest book, the one that I wanted to talk about, I was reading the wrong section of my notes, is called Plan Red, China's Project to Destroy America. Make sure you get 3 copies of that one. 1 for yourself and 2 to give away. Brand new book by Gordon Chang. You don't want to miss that. Gordon Chang, I want to get your reaction to Tiananmen Tim Walz.
Well, first of all, we know that his business, quote unquote, of taking high school students to China to be exposed to Communist Party propaganda, that whole exercise had to have had the approval of the Communist Party's United Front Work Department, which is the part of the party which subverts foreign governments. Now, Tim Walz can't say that he was a knucklehead because as governor of Minnesota, in other words, today, he has had continuous contact with the Communist Party's front organizations in Minnesota. And we know this because of Daily Caller reporting. So he has had contact with the most dangerous part of the most dangerous regime over the course of this century. And that raises suspicions, and I believe that he needs to explain to the American people why he maintained that contact, because he certainly looks like a communist sympathizer.
Oh, for sure. I mean, he's like a cheerleader for the Chinese, and it concerns me to put this person that high up in American government. I think he's too far up as it is. When he talks about the lopsided trade war, this is something where I guess it's a matter of perspective, right? Because I think we need to check China in as many economic ways as we can. In my opinion, we have an over-reliance on Chinese manufacturing and probably should never have allowed them, or at least assisted them, to get to the position that they're in as a global manufacturer back in the 90s in the Clinton administration and whatnot. Do you think Tim Walz is making a solid point here?
Oh, absolutely not. And that was the one thing that stood out from that clip that you played, where he said, well, look, I understand China and Donald Trump started a trade war. No, Donald Trump didn't start a trade war. The Chinese have been waging a trade war against the United States for decades, and all President Trump did was decide to fight back, which was great because we had a series of presidents who were letting the Chinese engage in predatory and criminal trade practices and not imposing meaningful costs. So when Tim Walz says, well, Donald Trump doesn't understand China, I think it's Tim Walz doesn't understand China, or Tim Walz understands China too well, but again, he's lying to the American public. Take your choice of options.
Yeah, I think that's a solid point. Folks, we're on with Gordon Chang, again, author of Plan Red, China's Project to Destroy America. Now, Gordon, I want to talk about the book. It's an interesting title, China's Project to Destroy America. I know we talk about this in broad strokes a lot of times when we have these conversations, but tell us how you drill down into this in this particular book.
Yeah. America's leaders do not understand China's fundamental challenge to the United States. It's an assault on our republic, and the Chinese Communist Party believes it is in an existential struggle with us. And, Rich, it's in an existential struggle, not because of anything that we say or do, but because of who we are. You have an insecure regime in Beijing is worried about the inspirational impact of America's values and form of governance on the Chinese people. So the Communist Party believes that there's only going to be one survivor. It's either going to be the United States of America or the People's Republic of China, not both. And although we're a far stronger society than China, we can lose our country and China can take us down because they're attacking us and we're not defending ourselves.
If you were an advisor to the next president, who my hope it will be Donald Trump, what's your advice on the China strategy?
Well, the first thing is we have to understand that we are in an existential struggle, not because of what we think, but because that China's waging one, which means we've got to cut our contacts with China and sever them. And I know that people will think that's extreme, but China uses every point of contact to take down our society, and they're overwhelming us. They're overwhelming our governments at all levels, law enforcement, businesses, universities, everything. And until we can manage this relationship, and by the way, we're not doing that right now, then we can lose our country. So let's close their consulates. Let's close their unofficial police stations. Let's close their state banks, which are laundering fentanyl proceeds. We have to go at this with determination, the same determination that they exhibit in their going after us.
What does that look like? And you mentioned a few things right now, but are you saying stop buying products from China, stop trade with China, stop exchange students with China? What does that look like from your perspective?
Yeah, trade would be the most important thing. And we got to remember that I want the president to enforce U.S. law. The Tariff Act of 1930, as amplified by the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act of 2021, prohibits the importation into the U.S. of goods made with forced or slave labor. Unfortunately, many Chinese products, including the ones made by Uyghurs, but not limited to products made by Uyghurs, are made with forced labor. So we're funding the genocide of the Communist Party when we buy stuff at the store. And we have just got to stop that because China is not only detaining millions in concentration camps, but there's also official policy of rape, torture, murder, imprisoning of children. These are the most horrific crimes since those of the Third Reich in the Second World War.
Wow. Gordon Chang, I want you to let everybody know where they can find copies of your articles and the best place to follow you online.
Yeah, I archive all of my articles for free at www.gordonchang.com and on Twitter or X at Gordon G. Chang, GORDONGCHANG.
Is that website the best place to get a copy of the book, or is there a better place?
Yeah, I am so deficient. I haven't linked the new book to the website. Just Amazon or any place that you buy books.
Fantastic. Folks, the book is Plan Red, China's Project to Destroy America. Plan Red, China's Project to Destroy America. Buy a couple of copies. Give one to somebody who's not in the know. Gordon Chang, you're a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, Rich. I really appreciate it.
You bet. My best to Lydia. God bless. Folks, we come back with more. We're going to talk about, are these fact checkers we see so much of, are they real or are they fake, phony, and fraud? Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
Mr. Call Screener, who is a budding radio star, by the way. Richie Valdez is terrific.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Border crossings are now at a low for the Biden presidency. But our CBS polling shows 65% of Trump voters believe the Biden administration is trying to intentionally increase the number of migrants at the border. And among the people who do believe that, 3/4 of them say it's because the administration wants them to vote. And the Speaker of the House just told us that he thinks non-citizens are going to vote, even though this is already illegal. under established law. What mechanisms can you tell the public about that exist to prevent this from happening?
So what a powerful example of disinformation. There is no facts underlying these assertions. They are extremely damaging. It causes people to lose confidence in the integrity of the election system. And we need people in positions of authority to actually communicate accurate information to the voting public. The numbers that we are experiencing now at the border are actually lower than they were at this time of year in 2019. Mm-hmm. And so it's not just over the last 3 years, but well before them in the pre-COVID times. And the notion that we in law enforcement have sought to intentionally allow individuals to cross the border illegally for the purpose of voting is preposterous. And everyone should condemn that rhetoric. Everyone, regardless of party affiliation.
That, of course, is the Secretary of Homeland Security, Alejandro Mayorkas, the impeached Alejandro Mayorkas. And he's talking about there being no truth to this and no truth to that and lies, lies, lies. And this is fake, it's phony, and it's fraud. And I can't help but think of these fact checkers, right? Independent fact checkers. Usually those are the people that review my Instagram posts and say that they have reviewed it and that something I said was fake, phony, and fraud. And guess what? I'm usually not even saying anything. I'm usually just sharing somebody else's content. It could even be a news article, and they'll blur it out and say independent fact checkers have deemed this to be inaccurate or whatever it is, because they don't want people to hear the truth. That's what they did with the Hunter Biden laptop, and this is what they do time and again. And MRC, the Media Research Center, and Newsbusters, they've done a survey, and there's a belief, right, that Republicans are lying incessantly. And this is what the fact checkers tend to put out on places like Politifact and other types of fact-checking places. Well, from April to September, Newsbusters, a division of MRC, evaluated some of these truthometer allegations, and what they found was that Politifact is profoundly tilted against Republicans, whether it was true or not. And I want to get to the bottom of this because there's a couple of really good facts out there with respect to the fact checks that they reviewed. And to do that, we've got Tim Graham. He's executive editor over at MRC's Newsbusters. Tim Graham, welcome.
Thank you, sir.
You bet. So let's talk about your 6-month inquiry here into Politifact and their truthometer.
Well, I mean, this is an editorial instrument, and I think that one of the things that it's a gimmick that, makes it more clickable. But, we've noticed for many years, I mean, Brent Bozell and I did a book in 2019 about Donald Trump, and this was the point we made. It was, it's not just Trump, it's Republicans in general. We made this point where you could say Ted Cruz and Elizabeth Warren entered the Senate at the same time, and he was fact-checked, many, many times, and she was fact-checked like 4 times, and they wouldn't even put the truthometer on, I'm a Cherokee Indian. So, I mean, it's just... So, yeah, I've just been spending this year looking at truthometers on named politicians or public officials. So, yes, in this last 6 months, I did January to March 1st, and then now I'm done April to September. But from April to September, the Republicans were mostly false or worse on the truthometer 82% of the time. Wow. More than 4 out of 5. And that's just where it's like these people exist as sort of a Democrat interest group to constantly tell people not to trust the Republicans because they love to say, well, no, it's because the Republicans lie more. Well, first of all, you're a liberal, so you think the Republicans lie more. Okay, we understand that. But it's also that idea of which statements are you selecting? So, for example, they called Donald Trump pants on fire for saying Kamala Harris is a communist. As they said on CNN, she does not identify as a communist, therefore. But we all know, anybody who's watched enough cable news knows, Democrats and liberals call Donald Trump a fascist on a day-by-day, perhaps hour-by-hour basis. You will not find... Right. You will not find that on PolitiFact. That is not checked, meaning, well, we think that's kind of true. So they don't fact-check it. And that's when John Ossoff was running for Senate as a challenger, they called him a socialist, and PolitiFact said it's pants-on-fire lie. I mean, so it really does a lot of times fall into this, oh, how helpful to the Democrats you are, when all the time you're tagging the Republicans as liars. That pants-on-fire rating in the last 6 months was 15-1. And in this year, it's 19-1. Republicans lie pants-on-fire lies 19 times more. And, of course, most of those are Trump. Now, we should say there's going to be some of these where you'll say, yep, that was a whopper. But again, it's like Biden and Harris unload whoppers. Now, you just ran this Mayorkas soundbite where he's talking about all the heinous lies. Alejandro Mayorkas has spent 3 years saying there is no border crisis.
Right.
Here's the PolitiFact record on Alejandro Mayorkas. He has 2 fact checks. 2. One's half true, one is true. Though true is this year, he was claiming since May of last year, we've removed or returned more individuals than in any year since 2015. So they very carefully select the sentence they want, and then they proclaim him true. And so that's where I just say, when you actually look at these fact checks and pull them out, you're going to just notice this pattern. It's like, wow, this is so helpful to the Democrats. Overwhelmingly helpful.
It's sad to see that this is where we are, but the American media, in so many parts of it, at least the corporate legacy media, as it's referred to these days, have really just kind of sold out. And some will argue with me and say, Rich, no, they've always been sold out. They've always done this. And I don't know how true that is, because I guess I wasn't looking at it when I was younger. But Tim Graham, stick with me. I want to come back and get your take on that and a couple of more factoids from your survey. Folks, we're coming right back with Tim Graham, MRC. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Across America to the liberty-loving Latino, Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. Rich Valdez. And we got open phones across America coming up in just a few short minutes. The phone number for that, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. If you want to get your calls in now, that'd be a good idea. And our guest is Tim Graham, executive editor at Newsbusters, part of the Media Research Center, MRC. And Tim Graham, we've been talking about your survey where you did over 100 fact checks on PolitiFact and came up with the notion that they weren't really checking the facts. They were merely spinning the truth to benefit Democrats. Isn't that right?
Yeah, I like to say often they're not fact checkers. Most of the time, they're spin spoilers. They have a spin they don't like, and they have to try to take it apart. What we're doing right now, they all had to say, well, no, FEMA's helping settle migrants, but that doesn't interfere with the hurricane recovery. So, Republicans are liars because they don't want to talk about Why on earth is the Emergency Management Agency helping settle illegal immigrants? And why are we paying for it? This is what they don't want to acknowledge. Taxpayers are like, why is my taxpayer dollars going to food and to put illegal immigrants up in hotels and give them 3 square meals a day?
And rarely do Republicans get a chance to push back, but for, I'd say, Donald Trump, who's been really good at it. You guys have been, based your whole existence on pushing back on the left within the media. And now his running mate, J.D. Vance, has been out there really kind of front and center, very eloquently pushing back on the media narratives and lies. And over the weekend, J.D. Vance was on with Martha Raddatz, and I played this clip a little bit earlier in our broadcast, but for you, I'm going to replay it. And it's a little lengthy because it's kind of chunky, but to give you the full context, and you've probably heard it. But J.D. Vance is having a discussion with Martha Raddatz about President Trump's visit to Aurora, Colorado, where members of the Venezuelan prison gang known as Tren de Aragua, it's a transnational cartel, if you will. They took over a couple of apartment buildings to do whatever it is that they do, drug trafficking, human trafficking, etc. And she seemingly tries to downplay that and really focus in on what Trump said as if Trump is inherently wrong or bad for whatever he does, and that this gang is really not doing anything bad. It only happened in a few instances. Listen to this, Tim.
We played some other comments about migrants, including in Aurora, in Colorado, where Trump said the city had been invaded and conquered by Venezuelan gangs. The Republican mayor of the city said flatly the city and state have not been taken over or invaded or occupied by migrant gangs. So do you support Donald Trump making those claims that the Republican mayor says were grossly exaggerated and have hurt the city's identity and sense of safety? I understand what you're saying, that some people left behind, but he's making these statements that the mayor is flat out disputing.
Well, Martha, you just said the mayor said they were exaggerated.
Grossly exaggerated.
That means there's got to be some element of truth here. And of course, President Trump was actually in Aurora, Colorado, talking to people on the ground. And what we're hearing, of course, Martha, is that people are terrified by what has happened with some of these Venezuelan gangs.
Senator Vance, I'm going to stop you because I know exactly what happened. Martha. I'm going to stop you. The incidents were limited to a handful of apartment complexes, and the mayor said our dedicated police officers have acted on those concerns. A handful of problems.
Only, Martha, do you hear yourself? Only a handful of apartment complexes in America were taken over by Venezuelan gangs, and Donald Trump is the problem and not Kamala Harris's open border? Americans are so fed up with what's going on, and they have every right to be. And I really find this exchange, Martha, sort of interesting because you seem to be more focused with nitpicking everything that Donald Trump has said rather than acknowledging that apartment complexes in the United States of America are being taken over by violent gangs. I worry so much more about that problem than anything else here. We've got to get American communities in a safe space again.
So, Tim, there you have it. Again, a little bit of a lengthy cut, but really kind of showing that it's not just Politifact, right? It's so much of the media that's out there doing the same bidding.
Well, it reminds you very much of what the CBS moderators did to J.D. Vance at the debate. Oh, we're not going to fact check anybody. Hold on. Nope. Right. Hold on, Senator Vance. Hold on. You're not allowed to say that. You're not allowed to say that. We have to correct you. And he was trying to explain, the Haitians in Springfield, Ohio are all legal. Yeah, because they put them on the plane and said, you all have the CBP1 app. You're all legal. Waved a wand, he said. And it's really funny because I went back and said, how have the media covered the CBP1 app? I mean, they barely covered it, but you can guess how they have brought it up. Miguel thinks that the CBP1 app is not helping him come into the country. It's customer service where the illegal aliens are saying this app is not working for me. That's the way the networks cover immigration.
Yeah, and it's a shame that they're doing that. Tim, stick with me. I want to make sure everybody gets a chance to find out where they could find out the work that you guys are doing at MRC and Newsbusters. Folks, we're coming right back with Tim Graham from the Media Research Center.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, America, welcome back. And we continue our conversation with Graham. To say Tim Walls, I was reading something from the Media Research Center and newsbusters.com. And Tim, help everybody understand the breadth of the work that you do and where to find you.
Well, of course, we're trying to monitor all the news all the time, which is a pretty big job, so we can't do all of it. But, starting with ABC and CBS and NBC and PBS, the TV news that everybody watches, we're recording it, and then when we find stuff we want to bring to people's attention, sometimes we want to bring people's attention to there was no story, like there was no story in the networks tonight about plagiarism in Kamala Harris. Mm-hmm. But we have a videotape archive going back to our founding in 1987. We can pull up video from 1987 and show you Joe Biden lying about plagiarism. But and I've been there since 1989. So, we've been at this a very long time. But it's so much faster today. When we started, we had a monthly newsletter. Now it's like, it's been an hour. You're not done yet?
Right. Getting it in real time. And for people that want to tap into some of the great stuff that the content you put out or some of the archived materials, where do they go? How do they find it?
Yeah, we're at newsbusters.org. We have videos hosted at mrctv.org, and we have a Free Speech America project. And so we're humming on all cylinders.
Outstanding. Well, Tim Graham, I want to thank you for being here. Folks, make sure you check them out. At newsbusters.org, great site. I use their content regularly. And MRC, Brent Bozell, just a great outfit, great team there. Tim Graham, executive editor at Newsbusters. I want to thank you again. You're a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot.
My pleasure.
You bet. And folks, we continue the conversation with you all. And there's a lot I want to get to. You got former President Bill Clinton. He says that Laken Riley might still be alive if we were vetting immigrants at the border. Then he goes into some bizarre Joe Biden-esque type of rant on making babies in America. We'll get into that. Plus, we've got other things. There's another one I want to play for you. We've got Speaker of the House Mike Johnson. He's out there saying, yeah, absolutely, we're here to follow the law and obey the Constitution. And the rhetoric that Republicans aren't going to certify the election, that's fake, phony, and fraud, especially when you've got what's his name? Jamie Raskin out there saying that it's Democrats that really want to not certify the election. Plus, Jasmine Crockett, the congresswoman from Texas, she was on MSNBC over the weekend, and she says the gangs are overrunning our cities, but it's really not the Tren de Aragua or anything. It's the MAGA gang and the white supremacists. We've got plenty to cover, plus your phone calls and more. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. Keep it locked right here. I am Rich Valdez, and we're coming right back.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to hour number 3 of our program. We like to call it Open Phones Across America. And Open Phone America is available to you. You can call in any topic, anything you want. 833-482-5337 is the phone number, 833-4-VALDEZ. Looking forward to speaking with you all, coast to coast, and we're live, by the way, so if you're hearing this, now's the time to call. And a couple of things I want to get into, right? There's no shortage of news today. P. Diddy was hit with another wave of lawsuits. This is in the New York Post today. Diddy was hit with a shocking claim of rape and assault, including in the New York City Macy's, or in like the flagship store, and death threats of as well. I mean, just a lot here. Let me see if these pop-up things mess me up here. New cases are all filed by anonymous plaintiffs. Well, you know, when it comes to anonymous, it's hard to believe anybody when they're anonymous, right? It reminds me of Dr. Christine Blasey Ford, right? That was her name. She was anonymous, and then she wasn't, right? I think that's how it went. And then she was on the record, and then she said all these things about Brett Kavanaugh. He was this, that, and the other. And then it turned out she couldn't make anything up, right? She couldn't remember anything. She was cross-examined by an experienced prosecutor, and everything started to fall apart. And she's like, oh, I misremembered this, that, and the other. You know, I didn't want to say anything until he was nominated to the Supreme Court. It's just, you know, it didn't work. And the same way folks on our side, right? When I say our side, I mean the side of America, the side of the Constitution, the side of patriotism. When people tell me, about a month ago, there's a whistleblower saying that they're going to say the ABC News questions were given to whoever, blah, 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 blah. The minute I hear anonymous whistleblower, I'm done. I check out. You know why? Because every single day, I put my name and my voice on the line to say what I'm saying. And there's a bunch of people that do that, including you all, right? There's a bunch of people out there wearing red MAGA hats. They're putting their face, their name, their safety, their everything on the line. I mean, maybe they're in a very friendly area towards Trump, but I can tell you put that on around here somewhere and you can get into some problems. So you have to stand for what you believe in. And when somebody says, oh, well, you know, for fear of retaliation, then don't do this. Of course they're going to retaliate. Trump ran for president. He knew what they were going to do. I was talking to Don Jr. one time, and I asked him, you know, were you prepared? And he said, yeah. When my dad went down the escalator, before he did, as a family, we were talking about that. You know, this is it. And they were prepared. They knew, maybe not the extent of which it was going to come, but they knew they were going to come after all of them. That's how this thing is. If you say something that they don't like, they're coming after you. It would never surprise me if one day you turn on the radio and I'm not here. I said something that somebody didn't like and they figured out how to get rid of me. It wouldn't shock me. It would be disappointing for me, but it wouldn't shock me. That's why I always encourage everybody, make sure you check out the podcast and subscribe to the YouTube channel and the Rumble channel. Not really posting a ton of content on there yet, but we will. I'll be doing, I think between now and Election Day, we're going to do a little after the show. So like things I didn't get to during the show that I really wanted to get out. We'll be doing something really short, but on video and streaming it onto the YouTube and Rumble platforms. So make sure you subscribe to those channels. But anyway, the point is, that's what they do. They come after people. And when you have this anonymous whistleblower stuff, I think it demeans your cause. Now, there's a new potentially anonymous whistleblower on something else that's saying that they have information. Put your money where your mouth is. Put your name on it. That's it. I'm always trying to make bets with people. Right? There's a bunch of people in my circle, people I love and respect, but that say, A few months back, they were saying this, right? We even had a guest on this show, and I was very kind to him. And he said, Michelle Obama is going to be the Democrat nominee for president, right? How many people told you that? How many? I'm sure you heard it from a few people, right? We had a guy who wrote a book on it and everything. I was skeptical then. I knew I was right then, and I'm still right today. It's not about being right or wrong, but it's about understanding how this thing works. Michelle Obama was never going to get in this race. And I think I've said that countless times. The same way that those same people are now saying things like, I think for the first time ever, we might not have an election. Are you kidding me? Of course we're going to have an election. Period, the end. Right? And you've got Speaker Mike Johnson out there explaining why he's going to certify the election, but you've got the Democrats out there. And that's how you really check these things, right? Do your own fact checking. Who's out there saying that there's not going to be an election? Trump, who in every other sentence says, and on November 5th, if you elect me, your next president, right? He says it all the time. But you've got the Democrats, right? Jamie Raskin, he's out there saying that they're not going to certify the election, the Democrats, because of what the Supreme Court did, right? So you have to look at who are we echoing, who are we parroting, and who is it helping? It's not helping the American people, that's for sure. But anyway, we're going to get into that in a moment. But every now and again, you've got people that are out there telling the truth, and then they'll try and cover it up with a moment of craziness, right? President Bill Clinton was out there, and he, I guess it was over the weekend, right? He says that the case in Georgia, Laken Riley, the young girl, the same age as my daughter, a college student as well, that she'd be alive today if we were actually vetting immigrants coming across the border. And I think he's right on that. Now, of course, then he goes into this kind of off-the-wall commentary on why we need immigrants. And it's basically because we're not having enough babies, right? Something about our birth rate. But listen to Clinton making this admission that this young lady would be alive today if Kamala Harris were actually doing her job as borders are.
You had a case in Georgia not very long ago, didn't you? They made an ad about a young woman who'd been killed by an immigrant. Yeah, well, if they'd all been properly vetted, that probably wouldn't have happened. But if they're all properly vetted, and that doesn't happen, and America is not having enough babies to keep our populations up. Okay. So we need immigrants that have been vetted to do work. Right. There wouldn't be a problem. And he couldn't keep people all torn up and upset.
That's exactly what he's been saying. Not the babies part, but Trump has never said we shouldn't have any immigration. What he said is we should have no illegal immigration. I think most people are in line with that. Matter of fact, the last poll I saw showed that most people are in line with mass deportations. Nobody is in favor of this except other illegal immigrants and maybe a handful of legal immigrants that may have relatives that came this way. But even the majority of legal immigrants I've spoken with, people that waited and paid a lawyer and did X, Y, and Z, they're the first ones saying, look, I had to wait online. I had to make sure I had a sponsor. I had to make sure that I could afford to be here. Why shouldn't you? And why should you take away opportunity from our children who live here now, from everybody else who's trying to make it in this country, and you just waltz right in? I'm not trying to demonize anybody. I'm just trying to say we need rules. This is not about compassion. And if you want to make it about compassion, make it about being compassionate towards the people that are here already, right? The people that did things the right way, that waited online, that came here and want to invest and live and stay in America. We can't just open up the door to every last person that wants to come in and take over a building in Aurora, Colorado, or anywhere else. Anyway, we're going to get your thoughts on that and so much more when we come back. The phone number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. America at Night, your home for the best election coverage. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, amigos, welcome back. Rich Valdez, America at Night. Our phone number, 833-482-5337. And we've got calls from Montana, Pennsylvania, Florida, Idaho, and more coming in. The phone number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. Getting to your calls momentarily. But before I get to you, I want to hear what you have to say. But I also want to get your take on some of this stuff. Because I mentioned earlier, Congressman Jamie Raskin, right? He said back in August 4th to be exact, at a speech that he and the Democrats planned on using the 14th Amendment to stop Trump as soon as he gets into office, right? That was Jamie Raskin in August. Then you've got Liz Cheney, right? Now, Liz Cheney, she, let me see, where was she? Just to give you the everything here. Let's see. She says that she has no faith that Speaker Johnson will certify the 2024 election. Right. And then we've got Speaker Johnson. So we're going to start here with Liz Cheney on Meet the Press just yesterday, saying that she doesn't believe that Congress will, or at least Speaker Johnson will certify the 2024 election.
Do you have faith that this election will be free and fair and that there will be a peaceful transfer of power?
I do not have faith that Mike Johnson will fulfill his constitutional obligations. And if you just look at what he did in 2020, he knew, and he knew with specificity, that the claims of fraud that Donald Trump was making and that he was repeating, he knew those to be false. We had very clear and specific conversations about that. He knew that courts had specifically found that those claims were false. He knew they weren't true. He also knew that what he was urging Congress do in terms of throwing out the votes of millions of Americans, he knew with specificity that that was unconstitutional. He was told that not only in discussions with me, but also by the House Republican Counsel.
There you go. Liz Cheney does not have faith that Mike Johnson will fulfill his constitutional obligations. Now, Mike Johnson, of course, also on Meet the Press yesterday, responded directly to that. Listen to this.
So here and now, can you say if Donald Trump does not win, do you commit to certifying the election results?
Kristen, I'm a constitutional law attorney. I've devoted my life, and demonstrated every day that I will uphold the Constitution. We are going to do our job in Congress. A free and fair and legal election will be certified, and that is our hope and prayer across the board. Of course I'm going to follow the Constitution. I'm going to follow the law. That's my job. It's my duty. I took an oath to do that, and I will fulfill my oath.
Regardless of who wins, you'll certify the results.
And regardless, of course, yes, if the election is free and fair and legal, and we pray and hope that it is, there's a lot of work being done to make sure that's true. I think this one's going to be so large, there'll be no question. I think Donald J. Trump is your next president, and that can't happen soon enough.
When people hear you say, if it is free and fair, does that not undermine people's confidence in the election results, Mr. Speaker?
No, it shouldn't. No, it shouldn't, because what I'm saying there is what the Constitution provides, what the Supreme Court has affirmed time after time, what history has affirmed. Listen, Democrats have objected to slates of electors in every single election this century when a Republican president has won. Every single time.
And yet they all conceded.
Out there.
And yet they've conceded. Former President Trump has yet to concede in 2020.
That's the point. No, the point is the process works. We have the peaceful transfer of power. We did in 2020. We will in 2024. Everybody can sigh and take a deep breath. Our system is going to work. We have the greatest system in the history of the world because we live in the greatest country in the world.
So there we go. We've got Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House, saying, listen, if the election is free and fair and legal, you betcha we're certifying the election. Liz Cheney out there, of course, sowing seeds of doubt, saying, I don't think Mike Johnson's going to do his job. He's not going to follow the Constitution. And then, of course, Jamie Raskin he chimes in and says, the 14th Amendment should be used to prevent Trump from even being able to serve. Listen to this.
What can be put into the Constitution can slip away from you very quickly. And the greatest example going on right now before our very eyes is Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, which they're just disappearing with a magic wand, as if it doesn't exist, even though it could not be clearer what it's stating. And so, they want to kick it to Congress. So it's going to be up to us on January 6, 2025, to tell the rampaging Trump mobs that he's disqualified. And then we need bodyguards for everybody in Civil War conditions, all because the 9 justices, not all of them, but these justices who have not many cases to look at every year, not that much work to do, a huge staff, great protection, simply do not want to do their job and interpret what the great 14th Amendment means.
Okay, again, Congressman Jamie Raskin, Democrat, with ties to his father, who is a known sympathizer of communism. And voila, there you have it. All the receipts, right? Liz Cheney sowing doubt. Speaker Johnson saying, I will do what I'm called to do in the Constitution. Of course, depending on a free and fair election. And Jamie Raskin saying, we should be disqualifying this man so he can't serve. Winning at all costs, right? Whether they win at the ballot box or not, forget the will of the people. He's focused on, we tried to strong-arm the Supreme Court through lawfare. It didn't work. They sided on behalf of the Constitution and we the people, and they didn't do their job, right? That's his opinion. So now we've got to do this. These people will stop at nothing. Absolutely nothing. And I think that it's sick, but what are you going to do, right? One of my radio favorites back in the day, New York radio host Bob Grant used to say, it's sick and getting sicker. I have to agree with you, sir. It definitely is. Anyway, we've got calls from all over the place, and we're coming to you. I see that Trump's making moves in Nevada. We got a call from Nevada. We're going to get to you momentarily. We got calls from Ohio. More coming in as we speak. The phone number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. Make sure you keep it locked right here. We're going to do all calls for the rest of the half hour. So if you want to weigh in, we're going to go to your opinions, and we're going to find out exactly what's going on in the world, in America, at night with me, Rich Valdez. Don't go anywhere. And if you miss any portion of our program, or if you any of the interviews that you like and you want to share with somebody or send them a text message with a link to it, you can go ahead and find that at richvaldez.com. Richvaldez.com is your source for everything that we talk about on the show. You can find a link to all of the interviews here. Plus, you can also go to the podcast, and you can leave a review on the podcast, by the way. The podcast of this radio show, which is called Rich Valdez, America at Night, it could use a review from you. If you like it, give it one of your 5-star reviews and leave why you like the show. I'd love that. Our podcast, This is America with Rich Valdez, shorter version, weekly type of thing. That's got plenty of reviews on it, so thank you for those. And again, richvaldez.com, that's the website. So we're coming your way with phone calls and more, 833-482-5337. The music means I got to bounce for a second, but I'm coming right back to your calls and more. Keep it locked right here. I'm Rich Valdez.
I want to listen to you, Rich, all the time.
America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Just to be very clear, he hasn't released all of his medical records. He released 2 letters. Should he release the results of the cognitive test?
It's unnecessary. He's on display every minute.
So it's unnecessary. Right. You can see that he didn't release his medical records. You don't want to know things like his cholesterol level, whether he's dealing with any issue that we may not know about, if he's going to be commander-in-chief. And he also said he would release cognitive tests.
Listen to your question.
Should he release that?
The American people Kristen, the American people don't care about the cholesterol level of Donald Trump. They care about the cost of living and the fact they cannot pay for groceries because Kamala Harris and Joe Biden's policies have put them in that situation. The medical records are irrelevant. Let's talk about things that the American people care about.
That is Speaker Mike Johnson. Again, listen to Kristen Welker from NBC News. She is grasping at straws in desperation. You could hear it in her voice, saying, don't you think it's necessary? You tell me which, in history, which election for president of the United States was the president's cholesterol level the number one defining issue? I can't remember a time in history. I've been observing politics and talking about this stuff for a long time, working in state government and outside of state government and in different roles and working on campaigns and whatnot. 20 years, 2004, right? That's when I did the first campaign thing that I did. And I can tell you this. I've never, ever heard somebody talk about a candidate's cholesterol level. Now, if some other type of ailment, perhaps the people have brought that up, like Joe Biden and the constant gaffes, stuttering, misstatements, things like that. And that was pretty clear. Even the Democrats turned on him after it was on full display, and they pulled him off the ticket. But you tell me, who cares about cholesterol? And he's right, Speaker Johnson. Nobody cares. I just got a report on my cholesterol as well. And despite me working out, I work out in the gym now 4 to 5 days a week. You wouldn't tell by looking at me, but yes, I am. And 4 to 5 days a week in the gym. And what's happened? My cholesterol level's gone up. I guess too much red meat for me. And I know there's a bunch of people out there that say, who cares about your cholesterol level? Eat more red meat. It's good for you. Those that promote the carnivore diet and whatnot. But maybe we'll do a whole segment on that to see, the truth behind that stuff. But unbelievable how NBC News is really trying to define, the election on whether Trump's cholesterol is high or not. I mean, that's kind of crazy. I can't believe she said that. If anything, say something else like, can we be secured and assured that he's not facing any catastrophic or fatal illness? Maybe. I still would disagree, but at least it would make a little more sense than saying you want to know the guy's cholesterol level. Nobody cares about your cholesterol level while you're reporting the news. Supposedly reporting the news. Anyway, I want to get to your calls on this and everything else. Let me see. Where do we go? I want to go to Rick, Reno, Nevada, KFOY. Go for it, brother. Welcome.
Hola, Rich, mi amigo Latino. Thank you.
What's up, Rick? How are you, brother?
I'm good. How's yourself?
Thank God, man. Thank God.
Well, I'm calling about Spanish play on words and a little bit about the election.
Sure.
When you say Kamala Harris, it sounds funny, but I didn't get it until I saw the Latino Roundtable or civic conference that President Trump had the other day in Las Vegas for the Latino people. And the one Latino fellow said, Kamala, and all the crowd was just hilariously roaring. And it finally, me for my 3 years of high school Spanish, how bad is Kamala Harris? K, how, and then Mala, bad. Kamala Harris.
Yeah, you figured it out, and it's making its way around. I'm glad. Somebody sent me a clip the other day of a song. I originally did like a remake of an existing song by a group called DLG some years ago, and somebody sent me somebody actually sang the song that we did here on the radio with the words "Que mala eres" in it, and I thought that was terrific. So thank you, Rick. I appreciate your your kind words there. And tell me your thoughts on the election.
Well, one speaker after another in that Las Vegas conference was talking about how Harris has been so devastating to their culture, to their economy, and how we need to get President Trump back in there because the Harris regime is destroying this country, and I agree with them. This one lady from Latin America, fairly youngish, 30s, maybe early 40s, youngish looking. She was talking about how she came up the hard way. She did it the right way. A very difficult struggle, and how she resented these people just being allowed to pour over unlawfully by the Harris regime. and it's got to stop. I'm sure you agree.
Yeah, listen, I'm with you. We have to stop illegal immigration. It's been a problem forever, and it's not like it'll ever really stop, but we can bring it to a halt for most intent, right? With just enforcing so much of what we can enforce, and then if people sneak in and whatnot, you work around that stuff. But and we saw that in the Trump administration. It was the safest border we'd seen in history. And this is coming from people like Tom Homan, who'd served, I think, 4 different presidents as a border chief down there. And it's crazy to think that we've gone in the exact opposite direction. You've got Bill Clinton out there saying that, yeah, Lake and Riley might still be alive if we were vetting immigrants. But at the same time, we need these immigrants because, Americans aren't having babies. It's absolutely crazy to conflate those two ideas. I think President Clinton might be going the way of Joe El Baboso Biden. And that's a sad thing. But Rick, thank you for your comments on Que Mala Eres. And you're right, that does mean how bad you are and how bad she is indeed. Shout out to KFOY. And let us continue. I'm going to go from Reno, Nevada. Let's go to Vero Beach, Florida, WTTB. Check in with John. Go for it.
Hey, Rich, how you doing?
Wonderful, thank you.
Good. God bless you for your wonderful, wonderful eye-opening show.
Oh, thank you.
Ear-opening. Anyway, I just wanted to say that I heard on the news about the spy balloons flying over the United States, probably mapping our strategic bases and maybe our missile fields to boot. And in addition to that, I had heard that some top brass had called Xi Jinping during the COVID crisis or thereabouts and assured him that they have the codes and they would not allow President Trump to respond if he and attack China if he thought there was a war. If they did enact a war against us. And with that, maybe the Chinese now feel emboldened that they think they have one of our top generals in their back pocket.
Oh, I think they've got a lot more than their top generals. I think they've had the president of the United States, the commander-in-chief himself, Joe Biden. They've had him since the campaign trail. I don't know if you remember, John, when he did, I think it was ABC News, and it was one of those, not quite debate, but it was, like a town hall. And I remember the interviewer asking him, it might have been David Muir or one of those. It was a guy. And he asked him his thoughts about, the forced labor and how they were treating people in China, including killing them. And Biden's response was, look, those are cultural differences. He called killing people in China cultural differences. I don't think I would ever characterize it that way. But listen, that's exactly what he did. And it's a cop-out. It's because he's weak. He's weak on China, and he's in their pocket, in my opinion. Or he's just afraid to say what he thinks about them. Either way, it's not good for America. And Kamala Harris is a page from Joe Biden's playbook. She's honestly, I think she might even be worse than him, and that's crazy to even think. But John, thank you for your call in Vero Beach. I want to ask you, John, how did you make out with the hurricane in your area?
Thanks be to God. My house was untouched, but there was one tornado that touched down several blocks from the family that invited me in to stay in their concrete blockhouse because I live in a modular home. So I stayed with them, but 3 blocks away, a tornado touched down and threw several cars in the air like paper plates, and tore up a bunch of trees. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you're well. God bless you, brother. Thank you so much for the call. Big shout out to John in Vero Beach, Florida, WTTB. If I'm ever in the neighborhood, I'd love to visit WTTB. I like to go out to Florida often. And let's see, we'll take a pause right here. We'll come right back. More calls to come. I'm Rich Valdez. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Voted best head of hair in live late night radio 6 years in a row. It's Rich Valdez.
He refuses to release his medical records. I've done it. Every other presidential candidate in modern era has done it.
All right, that's Kamala Harris. She's very upset. She wants to see Trump's medical records as if the guy's not a machine that's on the campaign trail, left, right, and center, right? Every day he does a rally or two. He's in a different state every 12 or 13 hours, right? Probably two states a day, easy. What's there to see? The guy's almost 80 years old, and he's out there like the Energizer Bunny. Let's go to Bruce in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania on KDKA. Bruce, go for it.
Well, I think you're being a little bit of a hypocrite, because
why?
Because you, along with the other Republicans, made a big stink about Joe Biden's health.
Well, did I ever make a stink about Joe Biden releasing any medical records?
Well, come on, don't lie.
No.
You're on.
Who's lying?
Saying you think
just be a man and answer what I'm saying. Did you ever hear me ask for Joe Biden's medical records, Bruce?
No, but you said he should.
So then, how could you say that I'm being hypocritical if I'm saying nobody cares about Trump's records because nobody cared about Biden's records either?
Because you didn't ask for his medical records doesn't mean that.
But that's what they're talking about. They're talking about medical records.
Right, medical records, and we deserve to know his medical records. And
why do you deserve to know his cholesterol?
Supply his medical records. So that's why you never asked for them, because he did supply them. Everybody knew his medical conditions. Okay, so being a hypocrite is exactly what you do.
I mean, you can call me what you like, Bruce. You can call me a hypocrite, and I can call you less than intelligent, because I think you're failing to grasp the whole point here is that there's an argument over medical records. It's clear to me that Biden was in a state of decline, so clear that even his own party pulled him off the ticket. Isn't that true?
I guess Trump is not in a state of decline then, right?
Maybe you think so, but it seems like everybody that's about to elect him to be the next president of the United States seems to think the guy's the Energizer Bunny.
Okay, just because he's showing up at his rallies, that makes his cognitive abilities.
You're having a tough time getting through a minute-and-a-half phone call on talk radio. This guy gets through 3 hours of speeches every day, sometimes twice. How do you compare the two?
Let me get to the point then. Here's the big difference between the Democrats and the Republicans. Joe Biden wasn't worried about his party. He stepped down for his country and not his party.
You believe that, Bruce? Do you believe that to be true? You don't think that Kamala Harris or somebody else pushed Joe Biden straight out when he literally said, they're trying to put me out of here and I'm not going anywhere, and then came back and said, I'm going to step aside?
Goodbye, Rich. Have a nice night.
Doesn't the truth hurt? It really stings, huh?
You all talk about lies.
That's not, you didn't hear Biden say that? Come on, Bruce. Tell me you don't remember Biden saying that. Bruce, where are you? Bruce, where'd you go? The truth hurt Bruce. He didn't like it. He doesn't like the truth. Oftentimes, those that disagree with me hate the truth. The problem is I come with receipts and I play you the recordings. I don't make this stuff up. Anyway, we will continue. Let us go with Michael, also from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania on KDKA. Michael, go for it.
Yes, Rich. Thanks for taking my call. Thanks for your great show. That was a terrific debate you had there.
Thank you, sir.
That was great. But I love your topics. I love your guests. And Gordon Chang is one of my heroes. I think he is so courageous for sticking up, for going up against the Chinese government, which is, I'm sure, a little bit daunting for most people to consider, and he is so effective at it. And I was wondering, since you apparently know him a little bit, and you know of him a bit, I was wondering if his surname Gordon came from the famous British military general Chinese Gordon.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know anything about that. I do know Gordon. When I started as a producer, I met him and his wife at the in the studios of WABC. They used to go on, and I'm sure still do go on, a great broadcaster. His name is John Batchelor. He's actually a mentor of mine, and he would have Gordon on every Tuesday, believe it or not. So I would always see Gordon and his wife. He's always with his wife. She's fantastic. They're a fantastic couple. I don't know anything about that, though. I do know that Hong Kong was under British rule for quite some time. So there might be some truth to what you're saying, but I don't know the answer to that. But, Michael, thank you for your kind words. I appreciate it. Shout out to everybody listening in KDKA, including Bruce, who just hung up on me because he didn't like the truth. But we will continue with the rest of your calls and more straight ahead. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, let's go back to the phones. I want to hear from you all out there. Let's go to Kristen, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, KDKA. Go for it.
Hi, Rich. First of all, I want to say I love your show. I love your thoughts. I would just like to say to Bruce, if you're so worried about a cholesterol level, why wasn't there cognition testing done on Joe Biden? And how about an IQ test on Kamala?
I love that, Kirsten. Thank you so much. That's so funny. Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania is coming in heavy tonight. Let's go to Carrie, also in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, KDKA. Go right ahead quickly.
Oh, hi, Rick.
Hi.
This is Terry. And the several comments that I have about the election are, first of all, I am getting so above and beyond tired of hearing all of the candidates bash each other.
Well, you know, what's interesting is today, Donald Trump was in Pittsburgh, not Pittsburgh, he was in, let's see, where was he in Pennsylvania? Oaks, Pennsylvania, and they asked him how he would make home ownership more affordable. And instead of attacking any of the candidates, he actually laid out a plan on how he was going to do that and how he was going to stop taxing Social Security benefits so that older people could also have more money. So while I know that there's a lot of attacks going on and we're in the midst of an election, I don't think it's accurate to say that they're all attacking each other, because I think Trump spent so much time putting out exactly what he would do as president. Moreover, he spent 4 years showing us what he did as president, which to me is worth more than anything. Thank you, Carrie, for your call. I appreciate it. Let me see. Let's go to Bill, Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, WRNN. Go for it, brother, quickly.
Rich Bunchinchero Valdez, you said that you didn't make a big stink, and actually you did. Oh, why is the top neurologist spending so many times going into the White House? Why doesn't he release his records? Do you recall saying that?
No, I didn't say that. I didn't say that at all.
You did.
No, I didn't. And I'm on tape. You could find all of my tape going back to, 2018. If you want to find it, it's out there. No, I never did any of that. The drama then, the question was, why was there a Parkinson's specialist visiting the White House if they were repeatedly saying that he didn't have Parkinson's? Again, it wasn't a question of medical records. It was a question of you had a president getting treated by a top Parkinson's specialist, a neurologist in that case, and that was a question the American people had. This is not somebody that's not being treated for anything, that's not displaying any symptoms. So I don't think it's the same. Plus, every physical that Trump has ever been subject to, he's put them out there. So I just don't think it's a big deal. I really don't. I don't want to know Kamala Harris's cholesterol number, and I don't need to know Trump's. I know mine is a little too high because I eat too much steak, but that's a different story for a different day. Nancy in Ottumwa, Iowa, KBIZ. Biden, I don't think he's doing that, as much as I don't like him. But thanks for the call. Hopefully you can call in again soon. Paul in Boise, thank you as well. KBFI, hasta la próxima. Take care. Good night. And God bless you, America. I'm Rich Valdez.